Welcome to the monthly Energy Transition Group meeting. And this month we have Sinead Earley from the University of Northern British Columbia. Sinead was here a year ago and interviewed our group. And this is a recap summary of that discussion and the context that discussion is in and leading to. So thank you. Take it away and introduce yourself a little more, please.
I will. Okay, thank you very much, Doug. And thanks to the group for inviting me back. It's really nice to share this space with you. There were a few, who was here last January when I was here? There's 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I'll shed some light on what happened during that session. Really, this is kind of an opportunity to report back, let you know what myself and the rest of the research team has been up to over the course of this past year, and also what's in front of us. So yeah, for those of you I haven't met before, and those online, sorry, I'll try to keep reminding myself that we've got the hybrid scenario going on. Sinead Earley, I'm an associate professor in the School of Planning and Sustainability here at UNBC. I come from Irish and English ancestry. I grew up on Secwepemc territory just outside of Kamloops or Kamloops. I've been in Prince George since 2015. So I got to stop saying I'm a recent arrival. It's like I've gone over the decade now. I worked with the geography program for quite a few years while I was finishing off my PhD, and then very happily started a more permanent tenure track position here in 2019 with the Environmental and Sustainability Studies program. So that's a little bit about me. I also want to just give a brief opportunity to introduce the community coordinator for this. I'm going to sketch out this really big and really exciting community energy project that community energy in Northern BC project I'm working on. We're 1 year in. We've been really lucky to have a community coordinator that's really facilitated some pretty heavy duty community engagement over the last year. One of the things that I've loved about this opportunity is it's finally supported me to visit and spend time in a lot of northern rural and remote communities in Northern BC, and it's been pretty awesome. Last year we had Sarah Korn. I think she was helping us out online during this conversation. Really great to work with her over the course of the last year. She's now gone on to do her master's work at UVic. But now we have our wonderful somewhat new, she's been working with us for the last 6 months, but our community coordinator. So just a few minutes for, sorry, Aaliyah, the sound might pick up there. Yeah, she can also just yell. Just a few moments for Aaliyah to introduce herself.
Feels like I'm getting an interview. Yeah, I'm Aaliyah. I did my undergrad in sustainable energy engineering at SFU in Vancouver. And I moved up here my husband got into the med school here. So we're here for 4 years and plus or minus some more after that. But yeah, I found Sinead and the research opportunity here, and it really aligned with the sustainability goals of mine. So I've really enjoyed working here. I was just in Fort St. John having our first community conversation first for me there, and I've never been that far up north before. It was cold and windy, but apparently this winter is pretty mild, so maybe I'm lucky, I don't know. And then yeah, I'm going to Prince Rupert in 2 weeks, so just overall lots of enjoyment in this role so far. So I'm curious to hear about this conversation too. It's me.
Thanks, Leah. And yeah, just to also frame it up a bit more, so this project, we're in year 1 of a 5-year project. It's being supported by ACET. So ACET is the Accelerating Community Energy Transformation Initiative. It's mostly housed at UVic, but we've really pulled off a really chunk of resources and people, really brilliant people working with some amazing partners to do this work focused on Northern BC and Northern communities. Yeah, later on, I'll point to some of the really great folks that I'm collaborating with. The funding for ACET it's federal funding. It's a significant chunk of money under the Canada First Research Excellence Fund. So to the next slide. So this is just, I'm also not teaching right now. I'm on that thing they call sabbatical. Which I still don't know. Yeah, anyways, we don't need to talk about that. I've learned a lot over the last 6 months, but I'm also not teaching in the classroom, so I'm a little out of practice. And I also don't love lepturing. I shouldn't say it, but anyways, I'm hoping there's going to be quite a bit of back and forth. I much prefer conversational encounters, so I'm hoping there's going to be opportunity, particularly because I'm summarizing. You know, I'm presenting back to you what I heard from you last winter, and really want to get your feedback. So that should be good. But these are just the pieces I'm going to step through. So what's the story look like so far? Just this first year. That we framed this research, so the title was Northern Regional Energy Dialogues. It has been a listening exercise. We had the guidebooks. We actually, and you were the guinea pigs. You were the first community conversation we had. I think it went quite well. But this guidebook has been what we've been used to sort of guide those conversations in all these communities. But we've also adapted the guidebook. Like we've been working closely with some like partners in facilitating these community engagements. And so this is just a starting point. But it really has been, we were just putting like whatever prompts we needed on the table to stimulate conversation. And so this first year really has just been a listening exercise. And I'm going to present a summary. So finally, it's way, way long overdue. But finally, I do have a summary report. There's a few hard copies floating around in the room. I consider it a draft. So we're publishing all these community reports on our website. We have most of them up there already, and I'll put this one up there as soon as like after this, right? Because I'm hoping there's going to be a little bit of feedback that might result in some tweaks or some additions or whatever it is. But I'm going to summarize that conversation. There was a lot of substance in it. There was some really great content, and then we've kind of pulled out or teased out some key recommendations from the report. So I'll kind of go over that. And then the other thing about the research project, the whole 5-year span, is that this first year has been labor intensive. It's been a lot about relationship building. That takes a lot of time, takes a lot of care. But that the idea was that what we learned during this first year is going to feed into years 2 to 5 of the research, and it has. So we've spent the last, I'd say, like 4 or 5 months, like really heavy duty sort of developing our proposal for the next few years, reflecting on what we heard during this first year. So I'm going to sketch out some of the kind of bare bones of what the research looks like going forward. And again, super keen to hear any feedback from the Prince George perspective or from your respective backgrounds or professional backgrounds. I'm really keen to hear from you in terms of like how we should structure this work going forward. Yeah. No, not too soon. Doug warned me that it's a room of talkers, so.
Yeah, so feel free to push this question to the end if you feel it'd be better then. I'm just wondering whether you've approached the Narwhal about covering this initiative. They're exactly the kind of people who'd be interested in it.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So Shannon Waters, who does some really great Northern reporting. I think I got the name right. She actually just wrote a really great report on Don Pettit and the Peace Energy Co-op. So she's aware of our project, and Kara Shaw, one of our researchers, has already met with her, and so we likely will have a Narwhal piece coming out soon.
Cool.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's particularly, so the Narwhal, like in terms of knowledge mobilization and like how we get some of what we learn out, like really keen to hear from folks, like which audiences should we be reaching and how should we be doing that? Okay, so I don't need to spend too much time on this because especially for those of you that were here last January, like this is what the sort of aim of the first year was. We were just like, and I have a map here Aaliyah's put together for us that shows you kind of where we've been. And I'm going to try and sort of distill like kind of the sort of key things that we heard in each place. But yeah, just this listening exercise, community conversations. Really, it's just an opportunity for, it has been an opportunity for communities to tell us like, what does energy look like in your community, and what's your vision for what you kind of want it to look like, and what are some of the barriers and opportunities sort of in between that might allow communities to get there. The other element, I'm probably not going to speak towards it too much today, but that like we're really interested in the regional scale as well. And we're really interested, one of the sort of elements that prompted this work is the fact that it's hard. It's hard for small towns, nations, reserves, small municipalities that are remote to get renewable energy initiatives up off the ground. And we've heard, especially through my work with through NorthCan, the Northern BC Climate Action Network, is that like sharing knowledge, like groups such as the Energy Transition Group, are actually really essential to kind of move some of these initiatives forward, right? That there's you know, a lot of communities that are struggling with that sort of feeling of isolation and remoteness. And if they're able to connect and dialogue across communities that might be experiencing similar challenges, then they're into that. So we've built in the sort of regional workshops to this first year. We've only had one. We might have two more. We'll see if we're able to sort of fit that in, but we're trying to sort of facilitate this peer learning between communities and building this sort of collective regional action. And I'll say that the caveat there is like kind of sub-regional. Like we're not talking about pan-regional across Northern BC, like definitely a reflection that, you know, that so many factors influence what energy systems are going to look like in particular places. And so we're kind of breaking that down into sub-regions. So those are the two elements of sort of the first year, or the kind of methods. So we've had 9 community conversations so far, yours included. And as I mentioned, 1 regional workshop. So we had that regional workshop in Terrace. So where have we been? So Kitimat, I've been lead and at the majority of these. So I've been like pretty busy. I'm still kind of recovering, but Kitimat, Tamar Koshenko, one of our other, my other colleagues kind of led that conversation. To add a bit of nuance here, like earlier I mentioned that in some places, in almost all places, we've really tried to identify and build a relationship with like a key like local informant, if you will, that like really was really important in terms of identifying who could get in the room and how to get them there. And so some of those partners or people or sort of organizations we worked with in different places, you know, it was different in some places than others. So Smithers, for example, the town of Smithers was a major player. We actually didn't even have a research facilitator there. They're one of the only towns in Northern BC that has a climate, what's Jema Timler's title? She's a climate action specialist that is a permanent position with the town of Smithers. So she was actually on maternity leave, but her replacement at the time like ran that conversation, and they had like 20 or 30 people there. So that's another example of, you know, that's one example of where we actually weren't sort of leading the conversation. Burns Lake I was in, Prince George Energy Transition Group, of course. Williams Lake, another interesting example where we did have Sarah Korn, who was our community coordinator, that helped to lead that discussion, as well as another sort of local champion. In a few moments, I'm going to summarize, as I said, some of the key points from the conversations I was at. I don't have Williams Lake in there, but, you know, really interesting question from Doug and Anne earlier today, like what are the reports for? And I'll help to answer that question in a bit, but the reports, obviously they've fed our sort of wider research program, but they've actually been assets, like they have been assets for communities in and of themselves. And I'll bring up a few examples of that. But in Williams Lake in particular, now they have I think it's a Caribou Climate Action Society that actually launched from that original community conversation. So like that's one sort of example of the engagement itself actually kind of leading to a really important, tangible sort of community benefit or whatnot. Mackenzie, and then Farmington and Fort St. John, Aaliyah was just there, and Atlin I was able to head to yeah, it's a ways up there, really fascinating story. And then as I said, yeah, the regional workshop in Smithers. And then just also to sketch, we're really trying to, we have a few more months of doing this. So I have a trip planned to the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality at the end of April. So we're gonna engage with Prophet River, Muncho Lake, Toad River, Fort Nelson First Nation, and Fort Nelson. We're hoping to do maybe Dawson Creek as well. But this just gives you an impression of you know, where we've been. And as we've been going along and going forward, we're starting to develop sort of formal partnerships with some of these communities or some of these actors. Myself, I've been working really closely with an organization in the Upper Skeena Skeena Energy Solutions, who works really closely with some Gitxsan communities, and they're doing like really pretty amazing things within some of their communities. Okay, so just a few, as I say, I want to kind of move through like kind of key points from a few of the other places. I was prompted today by just as Doug and I had a quick meeting, and just before we were wrapping up, he says, I want to know, like, I'm going to, as researchers, we obviously spend a lot of time like, you know, what are the common themes? Like, what are the patterns that emerge? And like Doug says, I want to know what are the differences? And he's totally right. And this is actually an element that underpins the research in a pretty major way. The reality is that energy transition, especially when we're integrating and looking to build momentum around renewables, will be place-based. It will be informed by local geographical, biophysical context. And that's why going forward, we're doing a lot of casework or case studies that like allow us to dive really deeply into very sort of localized energy systems. But yeah, so that was a really good prompt. And so yeah, I want to sort of tease out some of the differences or the kind of key pieces that I heard in each of these different places. I already said, yeah, so Burns Lake, I don't actually have an image for Burns Lake, but just really quickly, one of the really stark characterizations was that it is an energy corridor. So it's an energy transmission and transportation corridor. One of the codes is energy transport to elsewhere. So of course, they're sitting on the edge of the Nechako Reservoir, a lot of pipeline sort of routing through their community, as well as rail. So there was a lot about, so that's very much what characterized the conversation, as well as local government leadership. So one of the key sort of informants or key leaders that like led to that conversation was the director of recreation. It's actually really interesting that the directors of recreation in a lot of these communities, Mackenzie, in Burns Lake, they're the ones that are having to update this aging infrastructure. Recreation centers, arenas are very essential to Northern community and Northern identity. We spend a lot of time in them, particularly in the cold, dark winters. And a lot of these recreation directors are, as they're having to either replace assets or do some retrofits or whatnot, they're actually moving the sort of notch on some really interesting renewable energy projects in terms of how to heat and cool their facilities. So it was really great to have that sort of local government leadership in Burns Lake. Next slide. Quickly. No, you can now.
Regarding the different recreation places, and I was thinking of the aquatic center, that it sounds like they're having to do this major renovation. And do you know any details about that in that regard with energy, like changing the different ways they do things, or?
I don't know. I mean, I do have some colleagues that know a lot about because it's turned into quite a controversy in terms of the 2-year closure for the older pool.
Right.
And yeah, this is precisely this sort of opportunity moment. I don't know what they have planned for in terms of renovations, but these are these great moments where there's either like the purchase of a new asset or a renovation or whatnot, where renewables can be integrated and lead to long-term cost savings, like very clearly.
Right.
So that's a really good project for a student to work on, maybe, is like, especially because PG citizens are demanding more transparency from the city in terms of what is going to be done with that pool. That, anyways, I now just have a really good idea for a student project to, but I don't know if they already have that work locked in. Like the timeline is pretty, so I don't know.
Yeah. But. And also out of curiosity, I'm not sure if like how they clean the pool. Like I know it's a lot of chlorine. I know that I've been in pools where they've had, like they have to have a certain percentage of chlorine, but if they do like saltwater pool or just like other ways of cleaning it so they don't need as much chlorine, it's
doable.
Is that a factor in the energy transition in a way? Because I don't know if somehow that could factor into,
Yeah,
like, would it be more efficient to use,
yeah.
like, energy wise? I don't know.
I have no idea. All I know is that I much prefer saltwater pools.
Right.
But I have no idea whether it impacts like temperature
Yeah.
change or retention or
Right.
anything. Yeah.
So then you
Yeah, good
sink,
questions.
then
These
you
are
sink
precisely,
less
like,
too.
it's a really good question because especially for municipal or local government or regional districts, like if they're having to update, and this is where we're at in Northern British Columbia, I mean, across the provinces, that we're dealing with aging infrastructure. And so these rebuilds are going to be coming online in a pretty major way, even like sort of road, you know, transportation, roads, but also sort of public civic centers and buildings. So really good pressure to put on local governments. And so this is another element of our research project that we're hoping to highlight, is like the Rec Center in Mackenzie. Actually, we're working closely with the Community Energy Association. They did a solar tour up to the Peace region last May. And so they have published some kind of features of what they saw on the way. And so if you do punch in CEA Mackenzie Rec Center, there's like a really great short write-up to show like what they did, why, and what they're saving in terms of emissions as well as financial cost. Yeah. But we're hoping to feature these through our project too. So yeah, good question. The little tidbits of difference across space, I guess. So this is a picture. Tamara Krishenko is one of the co-leads from UVic. I'm pretty sure this is Candace Wilson, who's the environmental manager from the Haisla Nation. I wasn't at that meeting. This is from Kitimat, so I wasn't at that meeting. But really interesting. Community members, local government, industry stakeholders are involved. Like they're interested in energy planning for the community, but asymmetric power gaps between local stakeholders and industry with no intermediary organization. So Kitimat, the largest energy consumer is Alcan. So you have, in some of these places in Northern BC, you have corporations or industry that are like major energy consumers, but aren't necessarily very active in thinking about community energy planning. And so a lot of communities feel at a loss, actually, with that sort of power dynamic. So that's very sort of central in Kitimat. As well as not just Alcan, obviously the new LNG processing facilities in Kitimat. The next picture is Atlin, a gorgeous place. Has anyone been to Atlin? Yeah, a while ago. When was it? When were you in Atlin? Yeah, I mean, it's really cool because there's that highway. Like, so you drive south from Whitehorse just a little bit, about an hour, and then you kind of drop down from that junction, and the highway down to Atlin, there's no power lines, right? So the pieces that characterize Atlin, they are non-integrated, so they're not. I mean, there's other towns in Northern BC that share this sort of same case, but they're non-integrated. They're not connected to the BC power grid, and they're unincorporated. So they don't actually have. They're not part of a regional district. They don't have local government. So, key story here is that there's a governance gap. And they've done really innovative and interesting things, I think, because of that in some ways. You know, one of the key sort of recommendations coming out of the link to that governance piece is because they're looking for collective representation. They're looking for, like, you know, some sort of like unit or vehicle to collaborate at a community scale, and then having that representation to the provincial government or to the Yukon government, because there's actually a lot of integration there as well. But they are very close to 100% hydro-powered community. So Taku River Tlingit First Nation, they established a 2.1 megawatt hydroelectric power generating facility in 2009. So this is harnessing the stream flow from Pine Creek between Surprise Lake. So Surprise Lake is like right above the little hamlet of Atlin, and Atlin Lake. So one of the first 100% Indigenous owned, so this is an independent power producer, Indigenous owned generating facility. One of the first of its kind in Canada. So it's Run of River. So this is, next picture. We went on a tour with the school, like it's a small school. They're part of the Stikine school district, even though it's like so far away. What's that? Well, the school district, I forget the number, but it's like the Stickeen school district. So I think they're lumped together with like, yeah, the upper, like the Skeena Stickeen region, like the North Coast. But it was really cool. We built a school tour into our visit up there. I was working closely with the Community Energy Association. On that note, so our visit and community conversation was paired with, we were also up there because they're doing a community energy plan. So we were able to like add more, well, qualitative data. So like these like conversations, and now CEA working with Taku River Tlingit is like now using our data to kind of make a richer community energy plan. So that's another way that our reports are already kind of feeding back in the community. But yeah, it's a run of river project, like totally fascinating. It's and also pretty simple, but they're doing it. And they're also, one of the reasons why they're doing a community energy plan right now is because they are thinking about expansion of this project for export, actually. So the Yukon energy grid is not meeting its renewable energy targets. And so the Yukon government is actually interested in being a purchaser. And they're doing feasibility studies right now, whether this sort of hydro expansion is feasible without too much environmental impact. And I think they're able to do it. All the technical terms have lost me right now, but I think they're able to do it with just not a lot of extra work, like another, it's not the pipe, there's like a penstock, one more penstock, sorry, to go to the generating plant. And just really quickly, you know, one of the things for that community itself, like there's this sort of export project, which is an economic development project, right? So they're thinking about it's an own source revenue for the First Nation, which is, you know, this is another thing, another sort of central element to our research is like energy economy planning. So like regional energy planning, but in ways that also build in like economic goals, right? But yeah, one of the key recommendations here, expand hydro and also battery storage. So yeah, the community itself is not meeting peak demand. And so I think it was BC Hydro put in a diesel generator in the 60s, I guess. And yeah, in the last few years, they're using more, they're having to switch over to the diesel more and more to meet peak demand because it is rising. But key themes, reduce diesel dependence, increase self-sufficiency is like really central to the Atlan case. Really quickly, I said I wasn't going to take too much time. I'm already probably blowing through a lot of time. Farmington, also a really fascinating case. Anyone spent time in Farmington? So farming community just northeast of Dawson Creek, between Dawson Creek and Fort St. John. This story is all about cumulative impacts. So this community has been at the front lines of liquefied natural gas development for the last 15 or 20 years. And they've managed it. They've come through. They're still farmers. They still own their land. There's a lot of leases, but it's been rough. And now they're in front of some pretty major scale industrial wind farm development. And so they're actually in front of a very similar sort of very precarious, confusing. They're negotiating leases with companies they don't trust. And even more so, the regulatory sort of structures in British Columbia have been dismantled at the same time. And permit sort of streamlining legislation. You know, some of you might know more about Bill 14 and Bill 15. Bill 14 is the Renewable Energy Project Streamline Permitting Act, and Bill 15 being the Infrastructures Act, is actually leaving a lot of these communities without any sort of regulatory support when they're sort of needing it the most. One of the key themes here was negotiating lease agreements, especially with a technology they know very little about. They want to know about life cycle emissions for these towers. They're not getting information from components. So one of the key themes is they want like neutral information. They don't want information coming from government because they don't trust government right now. They don't want information coming from industrial proponents because they don't trust them either. So that's where we're hoping our project will serve sort of a neutral, non-proponent driven information to help these people make decisions over who they sign leases with on their land. They actually need legal supports right now is kind of one of their highest priorities. So it was really, you know, the Peace region, we're hoping to spend a bit more time up there. Obviously, an area that has been also heavily impacted by the Site C dam. And then lastly, I think this sort of details or like the sort of case points. This is a picture from the rec center in Mackenzie. For them, the really key piece was sort of economic transition. So they have lost their industrial tax base. The forestry companies are gone, right? And so Joan Atkinson, the mayor, and the councillors are like, this is the key challenge for us right now. So mill closures, reductions in the industrial tax base, and so there's this need to identify and attract new investors to the community. And they're really interested in, so thinking about how they can, how kind of new investors can perhaps also elevate some of their energy goals. Some of the priorities discussed there as well, improved energy reliability and grid resilience. That was across the board. That's a pretty common theme. A lot of these remote communities are dealing with brownouts and blackouts. Also a lowering sort of level of trust for BC Hydro. Sort of these grid vulnerabilities is sort of pretty top of mind for a lot of communities. Also in Mackenzie, particular concern over the impact of wildfires. We heard this in quite a few other places as well, but Mackenzie with a town that has one highway in and out. But they've also done some really diligent work in terms of some wildfire resilience programs. And they're pretty proud of the fact that they've never had an evacuation in that town. Fingers crossed. But they're seeking more information on small scale solar, wind, bioenergy systems. This is also across the board. What we're hearing is that people are interested. Like they just want to know more about emerging technologies. And they're wanting like up-to-date information, which is kind of challenging because things are actually moving pretty fast, right? In terms of on the technology and the battery storage side of things. But people are they are saying that they want access. They're ready to absorb information around clean and renewable energies. Sorry. But at the same time, and I think it came up in the PG report too, right? So there is a lot of interest in energy efficiency. Like we gotta kind of clamp down on that side of things as well. So efficiency and conservation, but community energy independence, energy sovereignty, energy. Yeah, these are terms that are also pretty common across the conversations. So those are some sort of difference pieces, although I already sort of referenced a few commonalities. So these bullet points, there's 4 more on the next slide, and sorry, there's a lot of text here. But these were sort of built before the PG. So this is like in addition to some of the key themes that we found in the PG report. Concern over reliability, sustainability, environmental impacts of current energy sources. And then the second one, seeking greater agency. So that's, I mean, just like I said, energy independence, sort of energy sovereignty. They recognize the benefits of integrated energy systems, but just want to have a higher degree of control over what those energy systems look like. So this idea of agency and control was pretty large. I've already mentioned this, but energy systems is central to regional economic planning. So economic development can be part of this. Capacity challenges, that's a total buzzword. What does capacity mean? We heard a lot about lack of skilled professionals and technicians. That came up in your conversation quite a bit. Struggling with lack of knowledge. So energy literacy as a sort of capacity barrier. Trusted sources of information about energy options and technologies. Which is both a result of and contributes to polarization of conversations at the community level. I shouldn't say, we recognize that these conversations are limited. Some of them are small. Sorry, I should say, say Burns Lake, for instance, there were only 4 people there. So we're not trying to pretend, I should have started with that. We're not trying to pretend that this is capturing, the general sense of a community. Some have been to a greater degree than others, but we recognize that there are a lot of people not at the table at these conversations, and that's where different kind of research methods can try and capture what broader northern British Columbians are thinking about climate and energy. I'm actually involved in another project that's doing a random sample survey of northern residents on climate and energy, supported by the Pacific Institute of Climate Solutions. I can talk about that separate if anyone's interested, but realizing that this type of method is a little bit limited in that we recognize that not everyone's at the table. And then just lastly, Aaliyah, right? I've already gone over some of these asymmetrical power relations. Really interesting that energy and food solutions are integrated. So we're kind of calling this like food energy nexus or like energy forestry nexus. That, there's communities that are really trying to see these as being deeply intertwined. Like you can solve some food issues by like thinking about energy in different ways, and you can solve some energy issues by thinking about food production and consumption in different ways. So there's going to be probably some interesting cases in our work going forward that has this sort of nexus approach. Role of education and research institutions. Doug and I talked about this quite a bit this morning. Needs to be better understood. I think there needs to be a lot more dialogue across post-secondary institutions in northern BC, so the colleges as well as UNBC, to come together to make sure that our programming is fueling the transition. So there's a lot of work to be done there. Deep desire for community to community and regional collaboration. So we've generally gotten a pretty good response in terms of communities wanting to talk to and learn from each other. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna stop talking here pretty soon. But I just wanted to, so first of all, thanks again for those of you who were here last January. And I know it's been a while, like a whole year in between, but as I said earlier, it really was insightful. It was different. There was a lot more about the urban context, I think. Like there was some really interesting stuff about sort of neighborhood scale collaboration and neighborhood scale possibility. But some of the key, I've just pulled out some of the key themes. And so these are laid out pretty clearly on the first page, sort of summarize the full report. But again, stressing that this is an opportunity for feedback, either just like here in situ, but also any of you, you can get a digital copy of the report or take these hard copies home. And if you want to sit with it for a while and then send me feedback, please do. Prince George, current energy system dominated by fossil fuels. That's pretty clear. Even though you also characterized or sort of clearly outlined that there's quite a bit of momentum towards renewable energy adoption. Cultural and practical, so fossil fuels as a cultural and practical default. There's a high level of perceived risk and unreliability associated with all the alternatives in northern regions. That was a key theme. Energy system heavily shaped by government. I think someone said, energy is a concept defined by government. But this came through, right? The government and BC Hydro priorities and policies are revenue driven rather than citizen focused. There's technical and information gaps around emerging technologies, mistrust surrounding industry and government messaging, seeking greater energy literacy, particularly, there was a stress. I mean, there's the general sort of public energy literacy, but there was a lot in the conversation about for installers, for contractors as well, right? If you're really kind of seeking some answers from those types of practitioners in terms of what would work well in your home or what would work well for your vehicle or your transportation needs. So there's, really interesting to think about energy literacy in the trades as well. And there are a lot of initiatives that are trying to carry that forward. And then the last few key themes, definitely optimistic about electrification. This is, you have your origins of the energy or the PG-EV group, growing community interest in renewable energy sources. So transportation electrification as like a low-hanging fruit. while raising concerns related to future hydroelectric generating capacity. This sort of dependency on hydro, if you will, and associated vulnerabilities. That's what I mean about the urban context. There was quite a bit of really interesting context about like, there needs to be this integration between energy planning and urban planners. For solar, other technologies need to be integrated, particularly for new developments. So thinking about like, how do we bring developers on board to build suburbs a little bit differently, or to not build them at all. But thinking about the role of the city of PG, right, to facilitate this through zoning, through bylaws that support renewable energy infrastructure. This is like this is an absolute need. And there's serious cost savings for a lot of these smaller towns or municipalities that are struggling with their budgets. But it's challenging in that it's long-term planning, right? And there's significant upfront capital costs, of course. There was quite a bit about kind of supply chains, these stretched out, ridiculously global supply chains for things that don't have to be globalized. So thinking about how to shorten supply chains and sort of local sufficiency, particularly food came up, particularly forest products. So those two sectors. And there's general, there's just a general desire for regional learning and collaboration as well, I think, that came through. Particularly what came up in this group was also recognizing like historical thing, like that there's like, I think it was mentioned more on the Robson Valley, for instance, that there's been, successful run of river projects that have been up and operating for the last 20 years. Like we should be celebrating those stories. And there's like, it's not new. There's people that know how to do these things in northern towns. And we need to be engaging with them. There's some good nods. So there's more, we need to showcase those stories that have longstanding success in the region. Lastly, okay, so these are the recommendations. Support training programs for contractors, electricians, installers to increase local expertise. Improve electrification planning and transparent communications from BC Hydro. Encourage transparency in pricing across the technology supply chain. There's kind of concern, over like price hikes and like the actual cost, the cost of some of these new technologies is like, where's inflation coming from? So some work around that. Strengthen transportation transition efforts through expanded EV infrastructure. And trade policy reform, I know that the group has been proactive around that advocacy and some letters to the federal government. And we've seen, we could have a conversation if we want about what's happened recently between Carney and China. And the next one. Community-based energy initiatives. This is the kind of the neighborhood scale stuff. Like I think like PG doesn't have, I mean, you have your energy transition group, but there aren't, like in some other communities, you have these like innovation hubs or these nonprofits or these groups that are doing some really innovative things. There's energy improvement districts are some really interesting models out there. Cooperative solar or geothermal systems, energy and information hubs for collective learning, shared resources, and action. I'm hoping in the research going forward to kind of compile a lot of really great models and examples. I think PG is we've got the people, we've got the population numbers. I think we have the level of interest in Prince George to try and get some of these interesting kind of community-driven models going. Policies and programs that strengthen local sufficiency, that piece. And then embed renewable energy into urban planning. And again, yeah, getting these clusters of folks together. So planners, engineers, and energy researchers to align land use decisions with energy objectives. Because another thing that came up in the PG report was like utility scale, like solar or wind. And I know Clayton Lake Ney is exploring wind in particular, but solar came up. Particularly around the airport renovations. I think there were some possible initiatives up there, but just that there is the land, there is land in that sort of urban rural interface area that could could work for kind of, utility scale solar or wind. Yeah, so those are the sort of key summary pieces. I don't know what the next one. Oh yeah, so what? Let's put the so what one up there, and then I'm gonna listen. Renewable energy in the report. Yeah. On the where? Oh yeah, renewable energy. Yeah, efficiency. Yeah.
Thank you, Sinead. That was great. I'm picking up on the next to last point and wondering whether Prince George City Hall is completely missing in action on all of this. I've tried getting somebody from City Hall to come and talk to this group, and it was like shouting into the void. And I have no idea, is there anybody in the planning office who's even thinking about renewables? Do you have any insight into that? And is the current administration, do they have any interest in this area?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot of insight. I mean, they do have an energy manager. I don't remember, I'm not bringing up his name. What's that? That's here at UNBC.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, I should know who they are. They should be letting us know who they are. So yeah, I don't have a lot of insight on that, except, yeah, to say that, like, I think it's absolutely essential for supportive bylaw and local government policy to make this stuff happen. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know if this group does any, I mean, you do advocacy work around EVs and you've done it at the federal level, but maybe there's an opportunity going forward to do some work at the city level. Yeah. The challenge with local government is that there is such, you really have to, I think, develop close relationship with staff. And there are some, maybe I could think more about some local governments that are doing some, so like put you in touch with Smithers, for instance, to talk about how did they actually build that a bit more fully into their governance structure, like, what drove the prioritization of that. Because it does exist in some places, but you're quite right, it's non-existent in Prince George. Yeah, say, gosh, I'm saying some pretty committed statements here.
So just to
This is
follow up
recorded,
on,
is it? Yeah.
just to follow up on that last point about the history, and other people should definitely correct me if I've misunderstood this, but there was a previous time when we had a really forward-looking planning department in Prince George. The mayor who put in all the bike paths in the city had really put in a lot of work trying to build that going forward. And then we got a new mayor who thought it was all a waste of time and fired the entire planning department. And that's why we don't have anybody in Prince George.
Yeah. Yeah, it's trying to be creative about how to build stability in local government systems through those electoral processes and the hiring and the firing. That's why I'm stressing the importance of government support, but I think community-based work and community organizations can really like get things going and do things on their own, and also apply and then once that momentum is built, then apply pressure on local government. So I guess maybe that's just more, I'm a bit more of a grassroots, like, community.
That earlier era of the city with the environmental planning, they had one staff who was very involved in assessing the reality of electric vehicles and was part of the reason the 4 owners bought an electric vehicle, the city being 1/4, the regional district 1/4, Northern Health, and the university.
Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to
and
see.
Then for community energy type projects, we had Peace Energy Cooperative give a presentation to our group a year or so ago, and they were frustrated because BC doesn't allow that. Alberta does, or did. So the us to create community energy sites and projects. So that's something that we might want to lobby to do differently. I see the university's roofs being prime for community investment for a community energy project. Top of Home Depot, we've got energy presented to us. I think it was 140 homes they suggested could be powered by solar from the top of Home Depot alone. The opportunities are amazing.
Nobody else has any questions, I'll just go.
Yeah, and definitely, like as I said, I really appreciate, like, if any of you take those home and spend more time, like, there's actually a lot, there's some finer point, like I actually just highlighted some of the key themes. There's some finer points in there that if anyone has any feedback on, I definitely would appreciate it.
So I'm wondering whether there are opportunities from all of the development that's planned for the Northwest critical minerals stuff, if there are opportunities there to siphon off some of that money for renewables and community support and the sort of things that you're talking about here. I know they're planning to turn a fire hose of funding in that direction. But of course, you know, that's all really for mining companies. But is there any chance to get some of that for the projects that are important to the communities who are there?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. And I think I'll, like, before I leave today, I will, like, sketch out the framework we're using for our research going forward. And Tamara Koshenko is in the School of Public Policy at UVic and is, like, does really excellent work. And she's going to do a lot more work around the policy planning side of things. And there will be some work around, like, revenue, talking about revenue sharing. I mean, we're at a really fast, like, you know, the federal government as well as industrial proponents are zoned in on northern BC in a pretty major way in terms of critical minerals. And Tamara and myself and Kara actually just wrote a short piece about, you know, this being the next Staples trap, which is just, you know, is sort of, it's export oriented, and it's not actually, you know, the large benefits and revenue go to both government and industrial actors, and we're still, and the communities don't actually, you know, communities get job, you know, they're always given the jobs promise, but we're realized, especially with, you know, the mining sector is one sector where AI technologies are going to make some major changes. Like, I think we're at a sort of pretty significant labor shedding moment for mining. Which is different than forestry, even though we've seen labor shedding in that sector. But in mining, I think we're going to see it in a major way. We already have. But you're like, so what are the community benefits for these major mega projects that the federal government is supporting? And so, yeah, I'll share that paper with all of you when it comes out, because it makes a pretty strong argument for to not sort of get us into a new age Staples trap under the banner of energy transition. Without ensuring that these benefits do not continue to be siphoned off of northern parts of the province and people. There has to be something around revenue sharing and community benefit. And yeah, there are some interesting examples, I think, of, and one of my core research questions in one of the sub-themes is around community benefit, and how can we ensure, like what does that mean for particular communities, and like what can we do to try and facilitate that? Because I think it's a little bit scary, actually. Like, especially in the mining sector, we're on the cusp of some major development, for sure. Yeah.
You mentioned innovation hubs. Does Prince George have an innovation hub? Is that something our energy group should talk to see?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's another sort of buzzword. Like, what the heck do we mean when we say innovation hub? But you know, there's some examples that I could kind of put in front of you. Like, I think Prince George is a great setting. Sorry, I shouldn't jump in. It was a good question for the crowd. Yeah, like I know my colleague Mark Grew, he's in the planning program here. Like, there's been quite a few UNBC folks that have pushed some ideas around like community studio, which is like, because the reality, like, there also needs to be, I think, a lot more interaction between like community needs and the university in particular. So I think if there were to be an energy innovation hub, that I think UNBC faculty could play a much greater role. Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Yeah.
I have, I guess, two questions. One is about nuclear, and because I've heard a lot of people using like the buzzword of these new nuclear systems that are apparently a lot more environmentally friendly, and the waste isn't. I don't know if it's not as toxic, or if there's any advancements that have happened to protect the public from radiation and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And then about hydrogen and the focus on hydrogen that the government is doing, even though it doesn't seem to be the safest or the cheapest option.
Yeah, both of those technologies I don't know a huge amount about. Someone else, some other folks in the room might know, but the small nuclear reactors, the SMS.
I know a little bit. Just
I will.
Yeah.
All I will say is that it's come up in, I would say, almost every community conversation. Did it come up in Fort St. John? Oh, big time.
so
Communities are talking about it.
they're talking about SMR, so
yeah.
small modular reactors. The innovation isn't so much. This isn't so much technology. I mean, there is some in terms of the reactor and being able to use more of the radioactive material before you get rid of it.
Yeah.
But it's mostly in the packaging and the financing. So if you make a smaller, more modular reactor, it's easier for private investors to pay for it. It's hard. You can't easily get a private investor to pay tens of billions of dollars for a nuclear facility that we commonly have, like in Ontario. But if $1 billion facility is a lot more palatable to private investors.
Yes, yeah, for sure. So there are quite a few communities that are trying. I think they're seeking more information around SMRs. I know Mackenzie in particular, it came up in the conversation, and I think they even went to UBC. Yeah, they're calling on the provincial government for more information for sure. And then on the hydrogen piece too, also a technology I don't know a huge amount about, except that there's blue, green, and gray. So there are very, very different ways of harnessing that kind of energy, and some are just much more emission intensive than others. And also use different feedstocks, right? So we have to really think about our supply chains again and our feedstocks. Like if we're bringing agricultural sort of farm waste or from the prairies, or there are some interesting examples, I think, of using biomass in forestry, like small scale, that I think there's some feasibility and some interesting things to think about. So I guess my very uninformed response is that there's good hydrogen and bad hydrogen. Yeah.
Hydrogen also has a materials problem.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, hydrogen has a materials problem. So for larger scale applications,
Right.
they'll use it on big. Like we just can't transport it safely without it leaking everywhere, because it's just, or they call embrittlement of steel. So then the steel doesn't hold, the pipe fails sooner. So you can't, so it's not like you take a gas pipeline, natural gas, and put hydrogen in there. Then that pipeline, which could last 70 years, is only going to last 20, right? So there's some material limitations on large scale applications of hydrogen. Plus, depending on the hydrogen source, you need cheap energy. If you want to use like blue, is it blue? Yeah, from you get from water, blue hydrogen, yeah. Blue or green, I always skip the 1, 2 back. There's anyways, so most of hydrogen on the large scale, part 2 of that is further what's available is very energy intensive. So it needs very cheap energy, and currently energy is not cheap yet to make it really to scale, so that you can either be driving around with a battery car, or you just go and pump hydrogen and drive around with a fuel cell car. So that's the 2 major issues on that. And then going nuclear, everyone's waiting for it's a chicken and egg chicken right now. Everyone's waiting to see what else someone else is going to do. So Ontario did in Darlington they start with 1, Then they say the hell with it, and they're putting 7 in of these SMRs. So everyone else in North America is waiting to see what's happening.
Right.
There's been a few identified being built in the US, but everyone keeps pulling the trigger on them. Because now I think, well, we've got these on Ontario. I think we're going to wait to see how they turn out, and then we'll have a better idea.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, but SMRs can go scale down to like 20 megawatt sizes, so that you can stick them in, like Fort St. John, I'm talking about. You just stick an SMR out in the side wood somewhere, and away you go. You've got this residual power going on. And then, although they're sitting right next to Site C now, so I don't know what they're really afraid about power. But anyways, so anyway, but yeah, but smaller communities,
Yep.
could probably take advantage of that, like particularly in the north.
Yeah.
Like you just drop in a little 10 megawatt power plant, and it'll sit there and run for 10 years while they're in regular maintenance and everything like that. So, but yeah, the technology is still new and under development, and everyone's kind of waiting to see what's going to happen.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, this conversation is also really indicative of what we like. Decision making. Communities are they want this information. They know that there's all these options out there, but they don't know enough about them. So there's a lot of communities that are explicit that they want like an energy decision making matrix where they can see all the options and they can weigh the pros and the cons. Like, how much does it cost? What are the social impacts, environmental impacts? What are the cost differences? Like Fort St. John, for instance, they want to be able to compare between wind and natural gas. Like, what's the winning energy mix? And they're not able to make that answer for themselves, which is the piece that we're hearing about. They want to be able to have a greater sense of agency in what their energy looks like, but they can't actually make that decision without the information base. And so, like, we need to figure out how. It's hard because the technologies are emerging so quickly, and we have to wait for these sort of test cases or whatever. I mean, I think this is like built into the energy transition, right? That there's, and in history, these transition periods have been full of these like really rapid periods of innovation, and it's hard to kind of keep up with it. But like, yeah, one of the goals of our research project is to try and increase that information base so that people can just answer some of these questions on their own a bit to a greater degree, rather than being like, what the hell's up with SMRs? Like, rather than rumors, like able to make informed decisions about some of these things.
And various proponents tend to play shell games with the data. We need, what is the cost per kilowatt hour that actually works and does work? When you're looking at nuclear, when you're looking at wind, at solar, at hydrogen, hydrogen's really inefficient. The more we've looked at it, the more it's a stupid choice, unless if it's an incidental byproduct from another process. Then you already have it, so you may as well use it some way to a benefit. For nuclear, I sat on the airplane with, I think it was the vice, was that? Well, very high up in McMaster with nuclear associated with medical. And so then she gave me her card. I've emailed her. She didn't respond, but I prompted somebody else in Ontario connected with nuclear to try to get somebody to talk to us about nuclear. But again, nuclear, all the information I've seen, it's really, really expensive energy. And I think we need to have some independent comparison of how can you use the different energies. Maybe we can't fulfill all our needs with the best, and we have to use nuclear or hydrogen or something else, but we should check that out.
Just I have a question out of curiosity. I was reading this literature and there were talks of creating data center up in the north, perhaps Fort St. John and upward, taking advantage of the colder climate and creating data center for AI. Like, that's the new emerging technology. So creating data center using sustainable and renewable energy infrastructure. So in this research, does that come up anywhere? And if so, how they're planning to go about it?
Yeah, I mean, the only example that I've like really encountered and have conversations about are in Mackenzie. So they do have the arena. Yeah, who actually was on the job, or what was it today in in Student Street. It was
And we have an AI beside the jail down
It was-
here as well.
it was
Yeah,
Irina is one of the companies that's active.
I can speak a little bit more about that part, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's so they're on former sawmill sites or near former sawmill sites, so they're utilizing that spare capacity in the the utility that's there. So they started out as cryptocurrency mining operations, and then BC Hydro or the BC government and I think BC Hydro collaboratively put a stop to those because they're growing faster and they're eating up all this. Like if they didn't stop it, it would eat up all the spare capacity that was created with Site C when the government had plans for LNG compression stations. So you had a conflict of industries. So now they're turning towards AI data centers and kind of like providing that as a kind of like a service. So they're currently right now upgrading their sites, both in Mackenzie and Prince George. And I can probably see them try to do the same thing or build another one in Port St. John or other former Canfor sites or locations that had sawmills.
Yeah, so it's certainly something that municipalities are having to encounter because there's new sort of new requests for new startups. Mackenzie's interesting. I think they brought fiber optic to the community. Yeah. So there's always these trade-offs. So and this sort of connectivity piece came up in a lot of the conversations. Burns Lake, which like sort of services a wide rural region, like the South Side or whatnot. Like internet connectivity is really important in northern communities and northern places. And so Irina comes and says, okay, we are going to be, because I think they're the biggest. Iron. Okay.
They used to be called
Iron.
Iris. They used to be called Iris.
Yeah.
Now they're called Iron.
Yeah. Okay. Iron.
Yeah.
And they are the largest consumer of energy in Mackenzie right now. Yeah. So it's a pretty significant issue. It's a really good point to bring up that I think a lot of towns there's going to be requests for development for AI data centers. And it'll be up to those communities to be able to weigh the pros and the cons. And so hopefully our research is able to allow them to make those decisions better. But Iran, I don't know. I was on their website and they had like the map for the Mackenzie facility and like the star was like south of the 49th parallel. And I was just like, oh.
Yeah. They're
like there's
focused by their Texas.
Yeah. They're a U.S. company.
They have their own natural gas generation facilities and stuff nearby or something.
Yeah.
They eat up like 2 or 3 or something percent of the whole Texas grid.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a conundrum when you think about, we're trying to increase energy efficiency and conservation and we're increase renewable energy capacity, but we have this absolutely rapidly ballooning AI industry that is a huge consumer of power. It's a huge area of work that needs some more documentation. Yeah.
So I wanted to go back to and I just went totally blank because I've waited too long.
Yeah, sorry.
To hydrogen. Something that's really interested me about hydrogen is its capacity to be used for storage. And like when we're talking about that it takes a lot of energy to build hydrogen. We have a problem with solar, which is that we get a lot of it. And John and I have lived with solar basically my entire adult life. So I appreciate the challenge of having way too much energy on a beautiful sunny day that you can't possibly store. And so there was this company in Vancouver many years ago, Ballard, that was exploring the possibilities of using hydrogen for storage. And you wouldn't have necessarily to transport it. You could have basically, and I'm not an engineer by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm curious if anyone knows about research that might have happened around that more recently. So what I'm thinking is like a hydrogen battery in my home so that during the day, this surplus of energy gets stored in that form and then can be used later in the in the evening, right? So, and the reason I'm bringing this up is that I think sometimes the problem is not with the technology, it's how we're using it, it's how we're applying it, we're thinking a certain way, but if we just shift our thinking a little bit sideways, there's this other way of using it. And part of what gave me that idea is I have a friend in Australia who's a specialist on renewable energy. And he was saying in Australia, one of the ways that they can store excess solar power is by pumping things up during the pumping water up during the day, and then yeah, exactly, right. Which like because they don't have a freezing problem, right? So the
yeah. Yeah, well, this is it. You know, I mean, battery storage has come up a lot, but I think there's a lot. There's so much more to talk about.
Yeah, that's an issue of energy shifting. There's energy shifting for a few hours, for a few days, for a few weeks, and for numerous months. Yeah. And what is the best technology for doing each of those?
Yeah. You spoke.
That deserves some attention.
Yeah, for sure. You know, and it's interesting because that hasn't come up in the conversations much.
It's
battery storage has, but this idea of energy shifting, like vehicle to grid, was the first time it came up was in your meet, or the only time it came up was in your meeting. And so
it's hitting the social media in the last few days.
Right.
It's a new trend.
Okay, I guess I got to get on the social media.
Oh, energy shifting.
Energy shifting.
Yeah. Did you?
Okay.
So another one.
Hi. One of my questions, which you answered already, what is the benefit of this report that you're writing? It's a big, long report. You mentioned that you went to 9 northern communities, right?
Yep.
And are you taking examples of the successful successful transitioning from carbon lock-ins to renewable energies? Are you just focusing on the successful stories only, or you're also going around and also asking the questions about all the different perspectives? Of course, you have talked about all the different perspectives in every community, but if you were to do a case study here in Prince George, what perspectives are we talking about? What organizations are we focusing on, or more going back into the concept of the just transition, which is we're focusing on the people who are going to be impacted the most. Are we talking to those people? It's just I'm just trying to understand this. Sorry. And then also there's also this follow up after the perspectives. There's something called processes, and the processes is the collaboration in between the employer or the employees or trade unions and the government. So I'm just wondering if you're also collecting that sort of information as well, the collaborations between all these different parties that are going to be working towards, this sort of just transition. And then the third thing is, are you also going to be adding some policy efforts into your report? What sort of policies have worked for those specific communities, and what sort of policies could work here, specifically in Prince George?
All right, we'll have to schedule another hour.
Sorry.
To answer. No, I mean, there's a lot of questions there, and actually it might be a good prompt for me to just show the last slide, which shows, we'll show you kind of what our research plan is going forward. Because I think it might answer some of your questions there. But I guess, to try and, so first of all, through this first year, so to go back to some of your early first questions, this first year has all been about listening to and documenting certainly those success stories, like a lot of the drive to do this research has been like the fact that, you know, Northern BC is underrepresented in so many regards in terms of our electoral system, but also in terms of community energy. So there are some really interesting and powerful examples in Northern BC, and they're all coming online really quickly. First Nations, Indigenous communities are doing some pretty phenomenal work. So certainly there was an element of the piece of like, you know, part of what we're hoping to do through this research is just to highlight and amplify some of those success stories. But I'll say, like, as researchers, we're trying to solve problems and answer questions. So like some of those, you know, the questions we designed for this first year were also really about like, what are the barriers? Like, where do you want to get to and what are the barriers? So I'd say that was a big focus of our design, like our guidebook is like, we want to know what you're coming up against. And then that has influenced what we're going to try to uncover during this sort of wider research program. So we're kind of trying to do a bit of both. And yeah, so, oh, sorry, it's not me. Do you mind going to the last slide? No, just the very last one. The very last one, that one. Yeah, so this might give you a sense, because we're just at the very beginning, right? Like, so this is, it's as I said, it's like, we've got it will go to December 2029. It's $1.8 million. It's a pretty significant budget. And what we heard during this first year has sort of pushed us to, I know it's really small, I'm sorry, but there's these 4 sub-themes that are sort of clustered into these 2 big pieces. So the one is capacity development, and then to maybe answer some of your policy questions, because you're quite right, like what communities are asking for and what communities want to see in terms of policy supports are quite different across the region. So like we're hoping to kind of shed some light on all of that. As I said, Tamara Kushenko is kind of taking lead on a lot of those sub-themes on the far side. Energy economy, sort of integrated energy economy planning. I am going to work, well, actually, more on the regional energy economy planning. I'm going to work fairly closely with her. That's where we might be digging into some community energy plans with communities that are quite different. It's not just about energy, it's about housing, it's about resiliency, it's about economic opportunity. But also she's going to do a lot around policy interactions. So like, in what ways are provincial level policies either supporting or inhibiting some of these energy innovations. And on the capacity development side of things, strategic decision-making, that's where we're gonna wanna see these decision-making matrices. I'm working really closely with some as I said, some Upper Skeena communities. They've been, there is an Upper Skeena regional energy plan. So they have actually kind of moved forward like beyond what we're trying to suggest will be good for Northern BC. Like there's some, anyways, they've already moved the mark in major ways. They have built already an energy decision-making matrix for their communities. It's a website. Now we're thinking about how can we replicate that and make that useful in other for other places and other communities. There's some work around skills and training. That's less labor force development or workforce development. I'm also leading that. It is actually more about the post-secondary responsibility, I would say. So thinking about, you know, what are the colleges in Northern BC, as well as professional associations, as well as UNBC, what sort of collaborations or sort of dialogues are possible to help the skills and training gaps for the energy transition. Community scale dialogue and energy politics. So there's another sub-theme on like misinformation, because that's also a really big barrier. Our information landscape has exploded. People are getting their information from very different places. So we're kind of going to try and tackle that too. But also to answer, so a piece there, you were talking about collaboration.
Yeah.
Community hubs.
Yeah, like the processes. Sorry. Sorry, I'm just learning this in class, and I'm trying to sort of integrate it to what I'm learning here. So yeah, it's just focuses on who's gonna collaborate. Like if you bring like a new sort of industry here in Prince George, and you do it, and you're trying to do that sort of how do you call it? The oh my God, main word. Transfer, what's the word?
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is that it's like you have to also work along with like many different parties in order to make that happen. So
For sure.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get. Collaborations with like the city of Prince George in this case.
Unusual partners, yeah.
Yeah, or the provincial government, federal government, depending on who is going to be able to help you make that goal happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is an emblem of some of these innovation hubs we're talking about, is that it's getting like a diverse set of people to work together on these issues, and to kind of, you know, build some sort of organization or some sort of entity that is able to do that. We do have a bit of that, like we're these peer-to-peer networks, like we're the collaborative piece, and like who needs to be talking to who and how can we facilitate that at different scales, like at the city scale, like maybe Prince George is ripe for that right now. But also, you know, we're doing some work more also around North Can, which is sort of the pan northern regional scale. You know, what purpose do networks like that serve? And what are some of the other, you know, what else do we need in terms of facilitating those collaborations?
Are you aware that an umbrella union organization interviewed a bunch of us early January here on the energy transition?
No.
And you should connect with them.
Yeah. So you mean, sorry, a union? Umbrella union? Yep.
BC Labor Council.
Okay, yeah. And what were they up to? Why did they want to talk to you? Yeah. Yeah.
And what role we felt we should play in that transition. That was.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so there'll be issues of a fair transition because people's jobs will shift. We've seen that with Algoma, from what I understand, in Ontario, steel manufacturing. They've gone to an AEF process, I believe. And out of 2,900 employees, they let 1,000 go.
Yeah, for sure. So just transition comes up a lot, and it will be central. So the justice lens is central to this work. There's a lot of other, especially with the workforce transition. The Pembina Institute is doing some really good stuff, but unions will be a key. I think I see their level of activity and sort of role increasing, right? In what we're going to be encountering in terms of job loss and job gain. So for sure, just transition and sort of serving the most vulnerable came up in a lot of our conversations. It was very central in Atlin. All of these reports are online if you're interested in reading them. And it's very central to the Upper Skeena work. Like what they're trying to, you know, Sikadak is one Gitsan community that is doing phenomenal stuff in terms of energy independence on reserve. And they're you know, the first in terms of new builds and housing retrofits, and solar power for their daycare and solar power for they've got passive geothermal greenhouse. It's all to try and serve the most vulnerable in the community first. That's like that's their central piece. Yeah, so it's definitely come up in this work, and it will be a feature going forward. Yeah. All right.
I'm trying to remember, what did you call, I know that there's a description for it, but the forestry waste, like the residuals, biomass. I think
biomass is any woody,
yeah.
It's not even just woody material. It's
right.
Any organic.
Because I think you were talking about that as an option to create hydrogen.
Yeah.
And that, and but like I've been thinking for a while about, because I've learned about the wood fiber insulation. So instead of wasting it and burning it kind of thing, like a one-time use, if we're able to get a wood fiber insulation company started in BC somewhere, then we could take all those waste products, create an insulation that's already what's it called?
Then you have
like it's already on the positive of, like if you have mineral wool insulation, because of the energy required to make it, it'll take a few years before you meet, before it becomes like efficient and helpful. Same with fiberglass, but it's not as bad as wood fiber. But with the wood fiber insulation, it's already in the positive. So like right from when you get it for the building site, it's already benefiting.
Yeah.
Like it's already creating, like it's
yeah. I don't know.
Positives.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know a huge amount about like insulation specs, but there's like embodied carbon. Like there's a lot of ways that we need to think about how to use wood products in decarbonization strategies, rather than wood pellets.
Yeah.
I've written a paper on DRAX and wood pellets, but you're quite right. I think the building industry in particular has a lot of, and there are some really interesting pieces in terms of like, cradle to grave, like really trying to clamp down on the construction sector in terms of like, how can we decrease the volume of like embodied carbon that goes into those structures and store carbon rather than combust it. So yeah, just that we have to totally everyone says this, but rethink, what we think of as wood waste, like in a circular economy sort of framework. I think there's actually a lot of positive transformation in the BC forest sector. It's going to be forced. It is currently being forced upon us, because we're going to see major corporate flight of the big players for a variety of reasons, like geopolitical tensions and trade wars, but also because of the land base. And it's just not economically viable wood for some of those big companies. But
and they've already wasted it all.
But I think I think some of the smaller scale forestry companies are going to endure, and they're going to be able to do it by being really innovative in terms of what forest products come off the land and come offline, and rethinking how we build, and thinking about wood materials, of course. But you have to do it in a very delicate balance so that you're not pulling too much material off the land, right? In the way that historical forestry practices have.
Because apparently even right now, they're, instead of using just the byproducts, they're using like fresh trees to cut down to make the wood pellets. Yeah. And so it's like, okay, that's
a bad idea for heat and power generation in the UK. Yeah, and it's long global supply chains. In my opinion, we shouldn't be using BC forests in that way. But DRAX is a pretty powerful company. They come from anyways, don't get me started.
I know a lot about DRAX.
Do you? Well, maybe we should chat. They come up from a long line of slave ownership in the Caribbean.
Yeah, not that far, but in terms of the company that they bought out here.
Yeah, Pinnacle. Yeah. I'd love to chat with you more if you want to talk more about wood pellet. Yeah, I still have a lot to learn. Yeah.
Well, we've crossed 8 o'clock, so I think we'll call it a wrap. Maybe you could stop the recording and get it processing on the computer, and then feel free just to mingle and chit chat. And
yeah, thanks very much. I appreciate it.